This film is about the effects and changes in the environment caused primarily by human activity, and how the changing climate caused by this creates habitat loss for both humans and animals.
Habitat loss is the reduction and elimination of the area in which a species lives and reproduces. It can be caused by natural devastation, but is largely the product of human development and interference for the purpose of profit. Human activity is the leading cause of climate change, which in turn accelerates the rate of habitat loss. For example, industrial pollution due to capitalism expansion and globalization has increased the effects of global warming, and environmental degradation is being accelerated by the treadmill of production, as rapid economic growth has led to a huge demand for natural resources. Globalization has a massive impact on the environment through the effects of capitalism. Industrialism causes air and water pollution through factory emissions and waste disposal. Habitats are destroyed in order to extract natural resources or cleared to create profitable monocultures that destroy the biodiversity of ecosystems. The transportation of goods to other countries in order to outsource cheaper labor creates carbon emissions from the planes and cargo ships that are used. Globalization began with the shift from pre-industrial society to the industrial society we live in today. It can be defined as countries, businesses, and organizations operating on an international scale, and it creates faster economic development, which increases the rate at which capitalism causes environmental destruction. 3 types of habitat loss affect the natural world: destruction, degradation, and fragmentation. Habitat destruction describes the process by which a natural habitat is damaged to such an extent that it is no longer capable of supporting the species that rely on it. This can be seen in the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest, putting over 10,000 species at risk of extinction. Habitat degradation is a result of human development, which causes pollution, climate change, and the introduction of invasive species. These factors reduce the quality of the environment and negatively impact native species, such as those in the coral reef. Habitat fragmentation is the partial destruction of habitats that leave behind smaller unconnected areas. This can occur naturally, but is typically the result of human activity, as exemplified by the fragmentation of Arctic ice. One notable example of habitat loss is the Amazon rainforest, 17% of which has been lost to deforestation. 420 million hectares of forest were lost between 1990 and 2020, with an additional 10 million lost every year. The largest causes of deforestation are logging for timber, illegal mining, and space being cleared for cattle grazing and soya plantations. The Amazon is ideal for agriculture due to its fertile soil. However, clearing trees to create farmland destroys the rainforest habitat, the most biodiverse habitat in the world. It contains 15,000 species of trees, 3,000 species of fish, and 1,300 species of birds. There is conflict between using the Amazon for resources and agriculture and allowing the habitat to exist untampered with. This is due to the competing functions of the environment, as theorized by Caton and Dunlap. Unfortunately, deforestation has accelerated to a rapid pace due to the huge demand for resources caused by the treadmill of production. This has worldwide consequences, as logging directly contributes to climate change. Trees absorb and store carbon dioxide, making the Amazon rainforest a carbon sink that helps to reduce global warming. However, when trees are cleared and burned, the stored carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. With the rate of deforestation in the Amazon, this carbon sink is at risk of becoming a carbon emitter instead. Deforestation contributes to about 10% of global warming. Some studies suggest that if the Amazon is not protected from deforestation, the entire rainforest could become a savanna. This would have huge impacts on the surrounding area, as the Amazon regulates the regional weather patterns that agriculture relies on and provides water across South America. Additionally, the Amazon is an important source of food, timber, and medicine, so these are also at risk of being lost. However, several strategies could be implemented to protect and restore the Amazon rainforest. These include putting a stop to illegal logging and mining, reforesting areas through the replanting of trees, placing areas under protection to conserve them, and using the rainforest's land and resources sustainably.
The Arctic and Antarctic are vital for maintaining steady temperatures worldwide. They act as a cooling system for the world by providing a white, reflective surface against sunlight and heat, ultimately having a cooling effect on the Earth and balancing temperatures in other parts of the world that tend to easily absorb heat. Less ice means less reflectivity of solar rays, causing worldwide warming and melting. This is known as the albedo effect. The origins of global warming came from humans and our greed and need to expand. It's consumerism and capitalism that forces constant economic growth and demand for goods, leading to exploitation of natural resources and results in heavy amounts of consumer waste. An example of this would be the Willow Project, approved by President Biden in 2023. This will involve the extraction of oil in Alaska for use in gas-powered cars, but could cause detrimental effects on the habitat of wildlife and the climate breakdown, releasing 9.2 million metric tons of carbon pollution into the atmosphere each year. It's estimated that this project could lead to the loss of 532 acres of wetlands, and therefore 619 acres of habitat disturbances for polar bears. This catapult of triggering the ice melting leads to an increase and acceleration of the Earth's rising temperatures, having serious implications on the planet. Nearly 2 million square kilometers of midwinter sea ice have disappeared from the Arctic in less than 40 years. The increased frequency of floods, droughts, storms, and fires that have been taking place worldwide can be linked to sea ice loss and the rising levels of the ocean. Habitat and biodiversity loss will also accelerate, resulting in competition for resources heightening and the displacement of animal and human communities. Theory of risk society indicates that risks faced due to climate change are not evenly distributed throughout society. Therefore, certain groups may be more susceptible to the consequences of climate change. Melting ice caps are a key contributor to rising sea levels, which inevitably leads to the displacement of communities as a result of flooding. Globalization has ultimately facilitated the increase in ability for human mobility. However, not all areas of society have equal access to solutions when faced with environmental challenges, leading to inequitable migration and intensified social inequalities. Although melting ice caps has secondary effects on the human population, it can have severe and direct consequences that will cripple species that rely on the ice for hunting and breeding. Polar bears depend on sea ice to travel, hunt seals, and find mates. As sea ice decreases, many will be forced to travel further for food and spend more time on land where they encounter grizzly bears. Less access to food will affect survival, particularly of cubs and young bears, and longer periods fasting on land will increase the likelihood of encounters with people. We could lose more than 30% of the world's polar bears by 2050. Moreover, numbers of reindeers in the Arctic have fallen by more than half in the past 2 decades. They've managed to survive by migrating to find food, but climate change has forced herds to swim across previously frozen lakes, resulting in a lot of the young to drown. Protecting the Arctic ice is crucial because once it's gone, there is no recovering it. This has led to scientists being forced to create and test unconventional strategies to slow the loss of ice. These ideas are provided by a non-profit organization called the Arctic Ice Project. It involves the scattering of a thin layer of reflective glass powder over parts of the Arctic, in an effort to protect it from the sun's rays and help ice grow back, eventually breaking the loop of melting ice and rising temperatures. Over the past decade, the organization has scattered the materials over several lakes and ponds in Canada and the US, with encouraging results. In a pond in Minnesota, just a few layers of glass powder made young ice 20% more reflective, enough to delay the melting of the ice and bring hope back for the Arctic and Antarctic regions. For a lot of marine life, coral reefs serve as a vital habitat. It's estimated that around a quarter of marine species are supported by this ecosystem. But it's not just marine life that depends on it. Another estimated 500 million people also rely on coral reefs for the food they can provide, income generation from tourism, medicinal ingredients, and even protection from waves. However, coral reefs are in danger, as with many other habitats. Between 2009 and 2018, the world had lost around 14% of its coral, more than the living amount currently in Australia. This massive decline can be attributed to human activity, as well as the rising global temperature. With so many people relying on the reefs, this decline can have huge detriments to several communities' financial and physical well-being. However, as Ulrich Beck pointed out in his risk society theory, not all of these environmental risks are distributed the same across societies. Not all communities can afford to protect reefs or to invest in other sources of food and income. Countries such as Australia or those that reside within the Coral Triangle, like the Philippines and Indonesia, are at the most risk owing to their large coastlines and dense coastal populations. These communities would be disadvantaged as they would be forced into spending more money into protecting coral reefs or having to find alternative methods to fulfill their uses. If not properly protected, it could mean people suffering more from coastal erosion or large dangerous waves, potentially forcing people out of their homes. This could also result in having to travel further and work harder to find fish which rely on the coral for shelter, meaning people would be deprived of an important source of nutrition which they may otherwise struggle to supply in any other way. But exactly how are we damaging coral reefs? A portion of the carbon dioxide we produce ends up being absorbed by the ocean from the atmosphere. This causes a decrease in the ocean's pH level. This process is known as ocean acidification and can be detrimental to coral, as a more acidic ocean means that coral cannot grow or rebuild its skeleton properly, causing greater stress to the coral or even its death. Acidification has increased by 26% since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. This rate of acidification is 10 times faster than it was at any other period during the preceding 55 million years. Coral reefs are put through further stress by the overall rise in temperature. A warmer ocean can lead to a process known as bleaching, where important algae living in the coral is expelled, resulting in the coral losing its color and turning white. This is not just a visual change. The algae is responsible for producing up to 90% of a coral's food, and without it, the coral can starve. It doesn't end there though. Harmful fishing practices, the introduction of invasive species, and oxygen depletion from waste runoff have all contributed to damaging the coral reef habitats. Despite the destruction, there are many efforts being made to restore coral reefs across the globe. This includes coral reef nurseries, which aim to supply suitable environments for coral to propagate and develop. Once a large enough supply of coral is grown, it can be outplanted into other reefs. Other efforts include the removal of invasive or predatory species and building resistance in coral species to better adapt to climate change.
Climate change is the biggest risk facing the environment and human society. According to Ulrich Beck, humanity now lives in a risk society, in which modern society is reflexive and examines and changes itself to respond to risk. New knowledge is incorporated into action. Therefore, the knowledge of climate change and its effects should contribute to changes in behavior which help to reduce climate change and habitat loss. To make a change, it is a necessity for us to cut down on fossil fuels and halve carbon emissions over the next decade. The need for trees and plants is as important as ever, making it vital to decrease deforestation to allow the excess carbon in our atmosphere to be locked up and absorbed. All of this can be done if we as a society made simple changes to our lifestyles to limit the global level of consumerism, and is crucial for halting the destruction that is underway by limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees, hopefully giving us time to save this beautiful planet.